Well, among the chaos of timelines that started with Arcane, where at first no one had any idea what was really canon, but then it was confirmed that Arcane is indeed canon now, where now Arcane is even driving the current stories told in League of Legends, it turns out there are still some champions that are stuck in a weird canonical limbo. Of course, the prime example of this is Warwick. While every other character landed relatively where you would expect them by the end of Arcane, that is taking their original League of Legends visuals into consideration, Warwick is just not the same anymore. And right now, it seems like no matter who has to deal with him, no one really knows what to do with Warwick. Do you actually want to portray Warwick as that? Because while that design did work story-wise for Arcane, it is not as cool as the original design. So of course the theories then came up. Did Warwick actually die by the end of Arcane? And is it possible that he can be still turned into our friendly wolf? In theory, yes, if Riot wanted to continue the storyline, they could come up with something that would turn the Warwick into an actual Warwick. But again, that's not gonna help all the people who have to ask the question, how do we portray him? Well, so far, the answer has always been, let's just ignore Arcane. Sure, for the purposes of honoring the story of Arcane, Warwick did get a skin which tries to resemble that, but outside of that, he is still mostly shown as the good old werewolf. For example, even though at the beginning TFT did give us the Arcane Unbound Warwick, which was what you would expect, about 3 months later they did also give us the normal Warwick. Then League is of course ignoring that anything ever happened. That is also the case for Riftbound, where they did update Victor, but not Warwick. And yes, that does also include 2xKO, where they too gave us our furry friend. But it turns out, among all the characters, Warwick is not the only character that's really undecisive. It seems like there are others who also fell into the canonical voidy territory, with one of these also being Caitlyn. That's not one that I would expect. But yes, about 5 days ago, we got Caitlyn's gameplay trailer for 2xKO. Now, some of you may not know that originally Caitlyn was revealed for 2xKO during the TFT Open. And when that reveal came live, the feedback was pretty unanimous. Can we stop with the Arcane characters? Yes, by now, half of 2xKO's roster actually comes from Arcane. And if it is not Arcane, it is something that is definitely related to Arcane. So simply put, people would really like to move on. It really looks like the Arcane fighting game now. And the feedback was so strong that Riot even had to come out and give us an official statement, where they confirmed that indeed Caitlyn is the last Arcane character and we will not be diving back into Arcane for a while. Thank you! With that said, they didn't confirm whether the new champions would be more sexy humanoids, which yes, most of the League of Legends roster is that, but people are really looking forward to the more monstrous champions, such as even Warwick. But alas, now the trailer for Caitlyn was out, and it confirmed that Caitlyn would be the champion for Season 1 of 2xKO. Because yes, now, technically, the game launched. Now, this entire trailer can be dissected into multiple parts. First of all, let's talk about the background. Here we can see a brand new built-over arena, which will be only available from the Battle Pass. I have no idea if it is sold separately, but it is indeed the streets of Piltover. Now let's be honest, this arena looks awesome. You can see that for the most part you will be fighting in front of a cupcake store. Haha, that's a reference to Caitlyn, because you know, traps and cupcakes, that's what she does. And during some of the shots you can also see the great vista in the background, where you can see the great Piltover Council. We've seen that in the show many times before. And again, it just looks great. Then there are some of the details. and we'll get to those in a moment. First, let's bring up Caitlyn and her gameplay. So as you can see, the design they went with is definitely inspired by League of Legends. So while the overall form kinda reminds you of the Arcane design, all the details are League of Legends, making this actually a pretty good hybrid. They even gave her the tall League of Legends hat, which I don't think we've ever seen it in Arcane. There was the one scene where she held the small hat from her family, but it wasn't that tall. And since this is pretty much a reflection of the League of Legends version, it confirmed one thing: be ready to deal with a lot of sniping. So from the gameplay side, she is a zoner. She will be fighting you from a great distance, and if you get close, yes, she is able to juggle you in the air with the shots. And if she wants to get into the air, sure, why not? She is a zoner who also has an air dash. I know that Caitlyn is supposed to be an agile character, but that might be an overstatement. Then, yes, she is also throwing out the traps with the cupcakes, though canonically she is using those to catch yordles. And, surprisingly, there is a lot of kicking in her kit. She does have long legs, so I guess she's using them. In fact, you might be able to notice some references to the combat that was taught to her by Mbessa. You will mostly notice it when she's actually hitting you with the rifle, but the one very noticeable reference is the one where she throws you to the ground. In fact, when they show it in the trailer, they make sure that Caitlyn is throwing Vi down, because that's exactly what she did in the show during the scene where Mbessa was sieging Piltover. So I appreciate that Arcane reference. But on top of this, Caitlyn also got some new tools which we have not seen before. First of all, she got a bola gun. Please don't mispronounce that. It is the very same bola we've seen in the very first episode of Arcane, where the Wardens were chasing down Powder and Vi. Except now, Caitlyn has it inside of a gun. Interestingly enough though, she didn't get her net charge, though her rifle is actually the Hextech rifle that we know. Not the one she's using in the finale of the show, it's the more modern one she gets later. And yes, it does also have the same sniping runes which we've seen in Arcane before. And yes, as you can see, you can aim the ultimate, and you do deal more damage for headshots. Now, another new tool she also got is the Hextech Reflector. Now, from what I've seen from the fighting game community, there is something called the Aegis Reflector, which a lot of people are freaking about. I don't know what that is, but this does seem to be a Hextech shield that is moving forward. It can deal damage 3 times, Caitlyn can shoot through it, and I assume it also blocks projectiles. After which, the trailer also showed us her release skin. Caitlyn will get the Warden skin, which, I'll be honest, is a pretty good choice. This is what people know Caitlyn as from her tragic storyline of Arcane. And I appreciate that when she's using the skin, Riot shows her in Zone. If you know, you know. But yes, this skin looks amazing, and indeed, the gun is the high caliber rifle you'll know from the finale of the show. Also here, she is fighting Warwick, who is really trying to fit in the Arcane setting. Of course, she is fighting alongside Vi, who is also using the Arcane skin. And yes, later Arcane Jinx also jumps in. And finally, near the end, the trailer also shows us the S3 ultimate, which is the good old ace in a hole that we know from League of Legends, but here it is mimicking that one shot from Arcane you'll know. Although unlike it is in Arcane, it is a shame that here the bullet doesn't have the Hextech runes on it. Anyway, if you want to see all of these abilities in more detail, Riot did also release the moveset video, where they literally go through everything the character can do. And after seeing all of this, that's when the question may pop up. Isn't this really just Caitlyn with more tools? Makes sense for her to be like this after the events of Arcane, right? Well, to me, it seems obvious that the 2XKO team was dealing with some limitations. They were desperately trying to give us the Caitlyn that we know, but they don't know which Caitlyn people know. Is it Caitlyn after Arcane in a more modern version? Is it the Caitlyn we know directly from Arcane? Or is it a stranger version of Caitlyn from League of Legends, because that one is separate for some reason? Well, here the looks are absolutely borrowed from League of Legends specifically. The skirt, the boots, even the hat are directly from that design. So taking that into consideration, as well as the hat, as well as the fact that she doesn't look aged at all for some reason, and the fact that she's also using modern tools now, it seems obvious to me that the 2XKO team wanted to give us Caitlyn that is slightly more modern. It is ever so slightly ahead of what happened in Arcane. That is also likely why she has all those modern tools. If it fits the gameplay, then sure, why couldn't she have something extra? I'm all in for that. I mean, Jinx didn't really have a hammer in the show either, right? But what's interesting is that this entire release is packaged with the idea that we're dealing with a more modern Piltover. I mean, just have a look at the map itself. Sure, we can see the council in the background, which was destroyed in the show, and later they were rebuilding it, so who knows when that happened. But more importantly, in the foreground, we can see modern robots. We're not talking about Ballbog, no, we are talking about fully automated bots. Which yes, these were in Piltover later, during the era of someone like Camille and stuff. And so if this is the case, if this is modern Piltover, and this is indeed modern Caitlyn, why is everyone ignoring how Arcane ended? You see, Arcane ended with a really important detail. Caitlyn lost her eye. But even though that was the conclusion of the story that is also currently driving the present stories of League of Legends, everyone seems to be ignoring this, and that's not a small detail to overlook. To me, for that reason alone, this simply can't be modern Caitlyn. It has to be some form of Caitlyn directly from Arcane, even if it is a strange hybrid. Because by the end of Arcane, she's almost supposed to be a pirate. Which also confirms that yes, she likely got modern tools for the sake of awesome gameplay. And yes, she did also get a hat, for the sake of looking like she's from League of Legends, even though that hat was never in Arcane. Which honestly, once again, turns her into a good hybrid between all the different versions. But again, the point then becomes that nobody really knows what's happening with Caitlyn anymore. But the most important thing is that none of this really matters. What matters is that if you find Caitlyn in 2XKO and you're about to fight her, be ready to face all those Caitlyn Teemo combos and break a lot of monitors.